Hey y'all, welcome back to our very bookish channel. And I'm really excited for today's video. I feel like I get excited for all of our videos, but today's video is a video we do every other month, and they are some of our most viewed videos. And we're gonna be talking about our most anticipated releases for March and April.
Hey guys, welcome to March and April 2026 most anticipated titles. These are the titles that both of us really are looking forward to coming out in those months. I look forward to these videos because I love seeing the new titles coming out. It always gets me so excited. I end up wanting to read these books right away. Sometimes this is no exception. There were tons of titles that as I was making notes, I was getting really excited. I wanted to read them right now. I typically go over about 25 books and it's about the same. I don't remember what the count was when I went through and counted. It was somewhere around there, like 26 or 27. I do have some physical arcs. They're peeking out over here. And I have some electronic arcs as well. Also, one of which I have already read for a vlog that should be out before we post this one.
Hey y'all, editing Amanda here. Jen is referring to a vlog where we read arcs and we each read 3. We both read Adrift by Will Dean and then we each read 2 separate arcs. That video is actually not out yet. It was supposed to be out, but I had to prioritize this video because we definitely wanted this one to come out before March since we are talking about March releases. So that video will be coming soon. I just wanted to jump on here real quick and address it.
So I will make sure to call attention to that one too, because it was a 5-star read. I'm going to go ahead and start, and I apologize in advance. I've been trying not to wear my glasses when I'm recording because it tends to catch a glare, but I make notes for these, so I apologize. I try and angle the camera and the lighting so that there's no annoying glare. I apologize if that happens because I know when I'm editing, I always get irritated seeing like the glare on my glasses. First is on March 3rd. This one is by Joshilyn Jackson, and I have read a book by this author before called Mother May I, and I was surprised when I saw on Goodreads that I actually rated that 5 stars back in 2019. So it must have been a really twisty thriller to get me to rate it 5 stars. This one is called Missing Sister. It's about twin sisters, and one after college ends up in a tragic accident. The sister that lives, her name is Penny, and 5 years pass and she is on the police force. And I feel like this might be a common trope where new evidence comes to light or more information comes about and she ends up investigating and trying to get answers as to what happened to her sister. The guy that she blames for her sister's death actually gets murdered, and that murderer gets away. So she is on the hunt to see what that woman knows and to find out what really happened with her sister. And it says it's another page-turning twisty type thriller, so sign me up.
Now, in my first video, my most anticipated releases for July and February, I was very picky about the books that I put in because my most anticipated TBR jar is full. I have over 100 books in that jar, and I was just feeling and still am feeling very overwhelmed with that number of books because that's an entire year's worth of reading for me. The last 2 years I've read around 111 books every year. So over 100 books is a whole year of reading, and that's just those books. That's not like any of the other books that I want to pick up or books on my physical TBR or new releases. So I was very overwhelmed, and I would still like to cut back. However, for March and April, my list includes 30 books. And that's crazy amount of anticipated releases for me for 2 months. But I just really, really want to read all 30 of these books. Some of them I know are going to overlap with Jen's, but it's always fun to see which books Jen and I both have on our most anticipated releases list. So starting off on March 3rd, My first book is Across the Vanishing Sky by Katherine Cowles. I know, probably you guys are shocked if you've been following this channel because I've not been the biggest fan of contemporary romance. However, this cover just kind of drew my attention. I think that the book is beautiful, and I recently read Just for the Cameras by Megan Quinn and just really enjoyed that read. I thought it was really fun. I thought it was really entertaining. I was really rooting for the characters. So my eyes have been opened a little bit to the contemporary romance genre. It's not something I'm gonna read a whole bunch of, but I do want to sprinkle some of those books in there because I did enjoy the last one that I read. And like I said, this one caught my eye for the cover, but also the description sounded really good. So you're following Brayden, and she has moved away from a small town and is moving back into said small town because she wants to uncover a mystery. Her best friend, when she was younger, went missing. I'm assuming, it doesn't say this specifically, but I'm assuming that's part of the reason why she left. And then there's also a past boyfriend or love interest or some kind of connection with a man named Dex. And she moves back into this town to solve this mystery of why her best friend went missing or where her best friend went, and she lives next door to Dex. So that sounded very interesting. I love the idea of throwing those thriller or mystery elements into this romance book of solving the disappearance of her best friend. It also mentions that Dex protects her from someone that's trying to keep her from solving the mystery. So you also have a nefarious character in there that is after Brayden and trying to make Brayden stop and is threatening her. And then you have Dex come in, the romantic interest that seems to be the one to try to save her. This sounded fun, and since I am wanting to, sprinkle some more contemporary romance into my reads, I thought this would be good.
The next one is also on March 3rd. It's a horror called Turn Off the Light by Jacquie Walter. And this one says it's about two women living centuries apart are bound by the same dark secret. It's a haunting novel that appends everything you think you know about ghost stories, a delightful twist on both the haunted house and beach read genres, which I wouldn't necessarily put those two things together. So it piqued my interest for sure. I thought it would be interesting. It's not an author I've heard of, so I put it on the list.
This book, y'all, this book is YA. And actually, while compiling this list, I even surprised myself how many YA books I have in here, because YA has generally been a genre that lately, in the past couple of years, I've not been terribly interested in. However, some YA fantasies have been really fun for me. For example, Divine Rivals. I really enjoyed that book, and that was a YA fantasy. I have loved the YA dystopian novels in the past. I would read the whole series of some of those and just love them. So I do think it's something that I might enjoy every now and then, and there's some really good YA books coming out. So this first YA book is called The Ruins Beneath Us by Sasha E. Sloan. The description sentences of this book says, the first book in a romantasy duology by TikTok star Sasha E. Sloan combines a compelling love triangle, luscious world building, and spellbinding magic to deliver a debut with everything romantasy readers crave. So that sounds real good, but the description goes on to describe an elf woman who just turned 18, and she is in hiding because she lives on the border of the elf and human realms, and there's starting to be a war building up between these two realms. So she's been kind of hiding out from the humans, but she gets anxious one day and decides that she's ready to kind of venture out a little bit. And while she's out, she stumbles upon a young man who is hurt, and she uses magic to help him while he's unconscious. But she finds out later that he was the prince of this human world, and she has to try to fit in with humans and disguise her magic. Although that's nothing new, it does sound fun when you combine that description along with the blurb that I read earlier. So that's why this one made my list. This book made my list, and again, it's another book that surprised me that made my list because, one, it's true crime, and although I dabble in true crime, it's not a genre that I go back to constantly, but this caught my attention For that reason, and for two, it reminded me of a book that I read called The Ultimate Evil by Terry Maury. This book is called Zodiactually by Eddie McNamara, and it is talking about the Zodiac Killer. This book, Zodiactually, was written by a police officer who also thinks that it is not one single killer. And I'm going to read a paragraph of the description. In Zodiactually, former police officer Eddie McNamara peels back decades of myth and sensationalism to expose the chilling truths behind one of the world's most infamous cases. Through painstaking research of original police files, deep dives into newspaper articles, and analysis of thousands of pages of court records, McNamara delivers a groundbreaking revelation. The Zodiac Killer wasn't a single unstoppable predator, but an urban legend amplified by the media and public imagination. So this just made me very curious to see what kind of evidence he presents and to kind of hear his theories on it. Because if there's one thing that I have learned when you're researching something, you kind of have to go to multiple sources and decide for yourself kind of what feels right, what feels like it might not be true, what lines up with what other of the sources are saying. I don't really have any kind of real fascination with the Zodiac Killer. I haven't seen a whole lot of TV shows about it, even though I know there are some out there. This just caught my interest because of The Ultimate Evil that I read, and because I feel like now this is a second book, a newer book that's come out, and it's kind of alluding to the same, at least, theory that the Zodiac Killer was not just one killer. So I am wanting to read this, but I am going to have to be in the mood to read this true crime book, but it is something that I am interested in getting my hands on. My final book on March 3rd is The Library of Amorlin by Callie Josephson. This book, y'all, it sounds really good. I don't know why I'm so intrigued by this book, but I guess it has a lot of elements that are interesting to me. You're following Kasira, I think is how you say her name, but you're following Kasira. She's a con artist, and she is currently in prison, and she's sort of working off her prison sentence by hunting and killing magical beasts. And one day she gets approached with an offer that she needs to infiltrate and destroy the Library of Amorlin, and her sentence will be converted. She will be a free woman. The only problem is, once she gets in as a librarian of this library and she determines who she has to bring down, which is the head librarian, she starts to catch feelings for him. So I don't know. This just sounded like it could be really fun. I like a lot of things in that description, and I like the fact that this seems like it could be a slow burn romance between the two, kind of a forbidden romance. And it sounds like by the end of the book, she's going to have to decide, does she want to move ahead with this mission, gain her freedom, or does she want to stay true with the head librarian who she has feelings for now. So that seems to be a common dilemma in these fantasy books. The main character gets sent on a mission, and then she catches feelings for someone, and that kind of dismantles her mission, and then she has to try to figure out, or he has to kind of figure out what he or she is going to do and to remedy the situation. So that's not very new, but it is very interesting, and there are so many different ways to solve that problem. So I do feel like it's a trope that does not get tiring as long as the author is creative and the book is well written.
We're moving on to March 10th, and the next one is one that I actually won on Goodreads. I got an email. That doesn't happen that often. There's a joke out there that who's actually winning the Goodreads giveaways. I have won them over the years, but it's just not plentiful. Maybe you have to just apply for like all of them to try and win one. But I did win this one, so I should be getting a physical ARC in the mail. And it's called How to Survive in the Woods by Kat Rosenfield. I have hit want to read on several of Kat Rosenfield's books, but I haven't read one yet. This will be my first. And it says it's Sleeping with the Enemy meets Wild. So Sleeping with the Enemy is the movie with Julia Roberts, and I did enjoy that movie when I saw it in the 90s. And Wild, I am familiar with. I know it's like a memoir, but I don't exactly know what that one's about. I think it's about a woman who goes through a divorce and she ends up doing something in the woods. I just don't remember what. It says it's a page-turning thriller set in Maine's 100-mile wilderness. It's addictive and a disturbing tale of passion. It's about Emma, who has been raised by a doomsday prepper, and she is married to a charismatic tyrant who has kept her under his thumb. She plots a plan of escape, and it involves the wilderness, and I think she ends up getting close to like his best friend or something to help her, and they end up going on a hike, and she tries to escape, and I'm sure her husband ends up coming after her. If I get the arc soon enough, I'll be able to read it, hopefully, and get an arc review out, but March 10th doesn't feel that far away, so that may not happen, but I do look forward to reading this.
March 10th, Served Him Right by Lisa Unger. I know this is also going to be on Jen's most anticipated, so I am going to let Jen describe the book, but I just want you all to know that I am anticipating this book as well. I read a short story by Lisa Unger over the Christmas holiday, and I enjoyed it. I also was able to meet Lisa Unger in person, and she is a lovely person, so I am probably going to be excited for all of her upcoming releases in the future, because now that I know the person, well, I don't know her, but you know, I've met the person behind the book. It makes the book seem even more intriguing.
Also on March 10th is one of my favorite authors. If you watch our channel, you know this information because I talk about her often, and we have done vlogs. I think me and Amanda are planning on doing an arc review for Lisa Unger, and the new one is called Served Him Right. It's about women who go to a luncheon, one of which is celebrating a breakup. But during the lunch, they find out something happened to her ex, and she ends up getting implicated. And then someone at the lunch ends up getting some kind of sickness and in the hospital, and she ends up looking really guilty from this. I'm sure Lisa has a lot of twist up her sleeve with what really happened, and she's not really the culprit, obviously. I'm eager to read this new one, and I can't wait. So keep your eye out for an arc review for that one.
This book, y'all, I cannot believe more people are not talking about this book. I'm talking about Blood and Roses by Callie Hart. Callie Hart is the author of Quicksilver and Brimstone, which has been crazy popular. In fact, Jen and I read both of those books for our viral book series. So the books have really been insanely popular, but no one that I know of has been talking about Blood and Roses coming out on March 10th. This book sounds really good. You are following Zeth. Zeth is a criminal in this really seedy underworld, and everything is going fine. You know, he's okay with his life. He's okay with smuggling drugs and weapons and all of the dirty things, except when his boss decides that he wants to traffic women. And then he comes across Sloan, and Sloan's sister is missing. And I think she's trying to get Zeth to help her solve the mystery of where her sister went. This book is intriguing on all kinds of levels because of, one, the author, and two, the topic of human trafficking has been coming up a lot lately. So I think this book sounds interesting, and y'all know that I kind of like a dark romance every now and then. So of course I have to put Callie Hart on the list.
Next is a physical arc that I have. This Story Might Save Your Life by Tiffany Crum. This one has been getting a lot of buzz, and this is one of the ones that I was talking about at the beginning of the video, that once I was reminded about what this was about, I wanted to read it like right now. And it's about best friends who have a podcast, and it's very popular. Their names are Benny and Joy, and Joy's husband manages them. They've built an empire, so they're very successful. So one day Benny goes over to Joy and her husband's house and finds shattered glass, and the couple's missing. Benny ends up getting implicated, and he's trying to find out exactly what happened. And obviously there are a lot of dark secrets that are happening, things they haven't told each other. And it's said those that listen to the podcast would be surprised at how much they have kept hidden. So sounds very, very interesting, and I can't wait to read this one. I'm really hoping to get this read and to get an arc review out for you guys, because there's a lot of buzz about this title.
This next book is called Ruinous Creatures by Jessi Cole Jackson. And this book sounded different than anything that I've read before. Following Adela and Keon, and they live in a world where there are magical creatures and magic can be siphoned from the bones of these creatures. So Adela's job is to take the skulls that she can find, and she tries to match them with a person so that person can siphon their magical abilities. And Keon is a young man who wants to destroy this whole system, destroy this magic, because his parents have been killed because of the system and the hierarchy that this system falls under. So they obviously cross paths when they are in the matching hut, and she's supposed to match him with a skull. So I don't know how exactly that's gonna work and where the story's gonna go. That's kind of where the description ends, but I found this plot line very intriguing, and I feel like this could be a really good book, and I really am curious to read this because it sounds like something that I haven't read before.
Another physical arc that I have, it's called Whidbey, and it's by T. Kira Madden. I'm really excited to read this one too because it just sounded so interesting. This author is partially basing it on events that have happened to her, and it does take place, there's an island called Whidbey, and it's about 3 women who are tied to someone who has passed away. And how they're all tied together, you find out in the book. And it's about a woman who's trying to escape someone who had assaulted her, and he ends up coming back. So she goes to this island, and I'm not sure if he's the one that ends up either being killed or dies, and that's how she ends up finding connections to the 2 other women. I'm not entirely sure, but there's a lot of buzz about this title too. It's her first fictional novel, and I'm really looking forward to reading this. And I can't remember if I said, but this is also March 10th.
This book is a no-brainer. Any Finlay Donovan book by Elle Cosimano is going to be on my most anticipated. And the most recent installment is coming out on March 17th. It's Finlay Donovan Crosses the Line. And in this installment of the series, Finlay is going to travel to Maryland to save Vero, because Vero has been arrested and accused of stealing her former sorority's money. And Finlay goes to try to help get Vero out of jail and solve this mystery of who really stole the money, because Vero is claiming she's innocent. And y'all, if you have been following this channel, you know that I love the Finlay Donovan series. I consider this book to be a humorous mystery. It's not a cozy mystery. It's not a thriller or a just standard mystery. It's very humorous. And Finlay Donovan is your average woman. She is a single mom who went through a very not funny, but funny divorce in the very first book. She has a hot cop boyfriend that she has dated throughout the series, and it's just a humorous book. It's just very funny situations, and I find these books to be very enjoyable and very fun to read, and it can also lighten my mood because I do like to read a lot of heavier, layered, darker books. So throwing in one of these humorous mystery books from this series has just been a real joy for me to read, and I am highly anticipating, of course, this one.
I only have one on March 17th, which is technically St. Patrick's Day. And this one had been previously released on Kindle, but it's coming out on paperback. It's called You, Me, Her by Sue Watson. It seems like it's in the vein of like a Frida McFadden twisty thriller, a psychological thriller. The tagline on this was 3 people, 1 marriage, 1 murder. You may think you know what's going on in my marriage, but you'll be wrong. Only 3 things are true. Someone is a liar, someone is in danger, and someone is a killer. So I thought this sounded very similar to what a psychological thriller was that I get hooked on mostly by Frida McFadden. So I am looking forward to checking this one out.
This next book is called The Perfect Affair by Angela Henry. And y'all, I'm a sucker for domestic thrillers. I don't know what it is, but they just hit different than any other type of thriller that you can write. I think that's one reason why I love Frida McFadden so much, because she knows how to write a really good domestic thriller. Also, really love Liv Constantine. If you guys have not read any of their domestic thrillers, they are a sister pair that writes under the pen name of Liv Constantine. They have really good domestic thrillers as well. But this one obviously drew my attention because it is a domestic thriller and you're following a woman woman who is with her husband at a fundraising event for the company he works for, and she meets one of his coworkers, and she knows instantly that they're having an affair. And of course, the story is going to go from there. This is a thriller mystery, so I honestly don't want to know much more about that. I kind of stopped reading the description after that paragraph because I love to go into my books blind, but especially mystery thrillers, you have to go into them blind to get the full impact of the twist and of all of the writing and all of the plot points and the characters. So I have not read any more about this book, but it is on my radar. This book is Mayham and the Mortal by Shanora Williams, and this book grabbed my attention because you're following a woman who is trying to save her sister from a curse, and in order to do this, she has to cross over this very dark, dangerous land called the Shallows, and her guide over this land is Thane, and Thane was described as a sorcerer, assassin, and walking red flag. So I feel like this is going to be a very intriguing story. I'm always very curious about these dangerous lands with magic and realms, and I mean, that's why I love fantasy. Y'all know fantasy is the main genre that I like to read, so all of those things intrigue me. And the way that Thane, who is obviously a potential love interest, was described just kind of made it funny. So I feel like this book could be a good mix of fantasy and a little bit of humor.
The next one I was a little on the fence about. I try my best not. I definitely take ones off this list because this list does end up in the TBR jar and there's a lot in there. Obviously, we can't get to everything, and at some point, hopefully we get to everything that we really want to read, and I try and skim off as much as I can so it's not overwhelming. This was one I was on the fence. I ended up putting it on. It's called Where the Truth Lies by Katherine Green. It was inspired by true events, and that was one of the reasons that was pulling me to this book and made me leave it on here. It's multi-point of view, and it's a thriller about childhood sweethearts Rhett and Lucinda. And they seem to have the perfect marriage. 15 years ago, they almost lost everything due to an intense affair that he had. And there was a murdered body that ended up happening, and they don't say who. And there's new evidence that places Rhett to that murder. It might be the woman that he had the affair with, but they're not very specific in the description. And that's okay, because I don't need to know everything going into these books. It says it's a chilling, domestic, suspenseful novel. Again, it's kind of a typical trope story, but since it was based on true events, I was a little interested in that to see what that was about. I am one that tends to watch Nightline and 2020 and all the true crime novels and documentaries. So that was what caught my interest enough to keep it on my list.
Dig by J H Markert. J H Markert is my favorite horror author. His horror books are just on another level, y'all. They are so layered, so interesting, so well written. I can't say enough about his books. I did read the ARC. I am doing an ARC review, so just stay tuned for my ARC review. Hit the subscribe button, click on the notification bell, so when that review does go up, you'll be alerted and be able to watch it and see all of my thoughts about the book. But spoiler alert, it's good.
Of course, March 24th brings one of our favorite authors. Amanda is also very obsessed with his books, and it's horror, and it's Dig by J H Markert. We have done several different vlogs or ARC reviews with him, and we do plan on doing an ARC review for this one as well. I think Amanda is currently reading this or reading this in February. I'm pretty sure. She had it on her February TBR. The description says it's a surreal horror novel about a boy, Jericho Dodd, who took up an axe and murdered 12 people. It doesn't say how old he was, but it does say boy, so I'm thinking he has to be pretty young, unless they're calling a 20-year-old a boy. The odd boy has been dead and buried in his father's yard for years, but ever since the massacre, Crow Island has been dark and an unsettling place. A compulsion to dig comes over the people on the island, and it happens after Jericho's father decides to dig up the past he buried, and I think it means literally and not figuratively, and horror ensues. So obviously I'm definitely reading this one 100%. I'm sure you will see an ARC review from us.
This book is by a writer that I feel like, as a lover of fantasy, it is a literal crime. I have not read any of his books yet. The book is Daughter of Crows by Mark Lawrence. Mark Lawrence is so well known for so many highly praised books. The Red Sister is one. The Prince of Thorns is another. The series with The Book That Wouldn't Burn, which I think is one of his more recent series. I have had that book on my TBR for at least a year or two, and I think there's 3 books out in that series. I don't know if it's only a trilogy, but I just feel like it is a literal crime. I have not read him yet, and he is releasing yet another book in a new series, and I had to put it on my list. Like, all I needed to know was it was this author, and it's on my list because I have been wanting to read his books for so long. But if y'all have to know a little bit about the description, this book is about a very brutal academy. And y'all know that's something that I love. But every year, this academy purchases 100 young girls. And at the end of 10 years, there's only 3 of those 100 girls remaining. And those 3 remaining women will go out and sort of be policemen for the elders or for the group of people that run this brutal academy. This is the first book of a series, so I'm sure the first book is going to follow a woman who goes into this academy and is one of the 3 remaining, follow her 10 years in the academy, and I am just curious to see what happens after that. This sounds like a very brutal world. This sounds like a very strong female character. And obviously it's written by a very well-loved author, which I am embarrassed to say I have not read yet, and I need to. So I really want to start with this book and kick off my Mark Lawrence reads with this new series he's coming out with. And I don't know. I have a feeling once I read this book, I'm going to be dying for the next book in the series, and we'll probably start reading some of his backlist because it sounds so good. And all of his books, truthfully, sound so good if you go read the descriptions of them. If you like fantasy, I think he is probably a must read, and it's just a shame I've not read him yet.
Also on March 24th, I have another physical ARC, Steve Cavanagh. I did read one by Steve Cavanagh, and this one is technically in a series that he writes on a specific detective, and I think it said like number 9. I don't think you need to have read the others in order to enjoy this. I really liked the one I did read by him, Kill for Me, Kill for You. I enjoyed that book a lot. So I definitely wanted to read this one. And it's called Two Kinds of Strangers. And it's about social media influencer Elle Parker had the perfect life. That is until she discovered her husband had been having an affair with her best friend. But as hurt, betrayed, and unmoored as Elle is, she has made it to her mission to help others in need, even strangers. When Elle meets a man on the steps to the subway platform, crutches in one hand and a yellow suitcase by his feet, she can't help but feel sorry for him, just as he planned. This small act of kindness sets off a chain of events more terrifying than anything she could ever imagine. To survive, Elle will need to convince the world what happened to her was real. She needs a lawyer who can bend the rules to find the truth. Eddie Flynn, and that's the detective or lawyer that the series that Steve Cavanagh writes about. I thought it was a detective, but maybe it's a lawyer. Eddie Flynn and his team must find the stranger with the yellow suitcase, but little do they know the killer is a master manipulator and already 2 steps ahead. So it sounded really interesting, and I plan on reading this one. Also on March 24th is a cozy fantasy. This Will Be Interesting by E.B. Asher. I did read This Will Be Fun, which this is the follow-up to. And it's a hilarious fantasy, follows an unlikely band of heroes who must get to the bottom of an assassination plot gone wrong without breaking the one rule of questing: do not fall in love with your questmates. I really enjoyed This Will Be Fun. It was fun, obviously. So I am looking forward to the follow-up.
This next book is yet another young adult book that's on my list. I know. But this author I have read and enjoyed before. The book I'm talking about coming out is Devious Prey by Scott Reintgen. He is the author of Last Dragon on Mars, which I have not read, but he is also author of a book called A Door in the Dark, which is the first book of a series he wrote. I have not read the other books. I only read the first book, but it was pretty good. It was also I think all of his books are YA. So he is a YA author, and I have seen a lot about The Last Dragon on Mars. I think he is well known and well loved, but this book sounded very cool. It's about a plane that crashes on an island, and the survivors must learn to survive on this island. But what throws a wrench in the situation is there was a dragoness on this airplane that crashed, and when the plane crashed, it got out of its cage, and now it's kind of hunting these survivors. So that sounded really fun, and since this is an author I have enjoyed in the past, I am interested in picking up this book.
Moving on to March 31st, I have one that is, I think it's fiction, but it might also be science fiction. It's called Ruins by Lily Brooks-Dalton. It's about an archaeologist in search of an ancient artifact that could not only change her life, but upend the story of civilization itself. Professor Ember is handling a crumbling marriage as well as pursuing unearthing a lost empire that no one believes existed. And this one also, when I was just reading the description and you see the picture on the screen, sometimes I'm just really drawn to a description and a cover, and I felt like I really want to read this. It just sounds a little different than a lot of the things I've been reading, and that's one of the main reasons why, but I really look forward to reading this. I do have a digital ARC for this, so I can't read everything. I don't have that much time, and hopefully I'll get to it and I can do an ARC review.
Starside by Alex Astor. I've not read Alex Astor. She is the author of a YA series called The Light Lark. And this is her adult fantasy debut. And I don't know a whole lot about the book, to be honest with you, but I know that it is about a world of magic where humans have to fight in order to get the magic for themselves. So I obviously find that interesting as someone who loves fantasy, and I have heard of this author before, and I have heard really good things about Light Lark, and when I saw that she was coming out with an adult book, I had to put it on the list. I have to find out what this book is about, and I have to find out if Alex Astor is an author for me.
Also on March 31st, this one's called A Good Person by Kirsten King, and this one sounded very unique and very tongue-in-cheek and satire. I feel like, again, I love reading different things to mix things up, and this one definitely fit that description. It says it's Gone Girl meets Big Swiss. Now, I read Gone Girl. I wanted to read Big Swiss, but I haven't read it yet. It's another satire fiction book. And in this electric binge of a debut about a millennial anti-hero who seeks revenge on her ex situationship with a hex, only for him to actually literally die. So I don't know if that's coincidental, if she knows the hex did in fact kill him, but it just sounded different, and that drew me to it. So I plan on reading this. I also have a digital ARC for this one. Next one is also March 31st. It's by Sandy Jones, who I have read before, and the one I read was The First Mistake. And I also gave that 5 stars in 2019. Apparently I was just on a 5-star binge in 2019, enjoying all of these psychological thrillers. So this one's called Killing Me Softly. It's about Charlie and Freya, and they were a picture-perfect couple until a tragedy tears their lives apart, and they blame each other for whatever happens. Alternating perspectives from each, and it turns into a cat and mouse game, and it's a wickedly twisty tale of obsession and the deadly consequences of loving someone too much. I don't know exactly what that means, but it sounded interesting, so I plan on checking it out. That one might end up being one that goes in the jar, and I'll have to pull it for... We're doing those different now that we're not doing full vlogs, but we're just making shorts on the books that we're pulling from the TBR jar. So you may end up seeing a short on that one. The next one is also on March 31st. And I hope Amanda knows about this one. She might have it on her list as well, because I have a feeling she'd be interested in this. But it's called This Kingdom Will Not Kill Me by Ilana Andrews. It's a blockbuster new fantasy was how it was described. When Maggie wakes up, she's cold, filthy, and naked in a gutter. It doesn't take her long to recognize the city from the pages of the famously unfinished dark fantasy series she's been obsessively reading and rereading while waiting years for the final novel. And it reminded me of Game of Thrones because George Martin is infamously writing the final book to Game of Thrones. And the fans are kind of crazed that they want this final book. And it's been years. I don't know how many years it's been. I think that's what this is in reference to. I could be wrong about that. Because I'm not as knowledgeable about fantasy, so maybe Amanda knows. I'm not sure. She quickly discovers she can't be killed, but the same can't be said of the characters she loves in these books. Soon, instead of trying to get home, she's finding herself enmeshed in the schemes and attentions of dueling princes, dukes, and villains, and trying to save all these characters. Sounded different. I don't know. I'm still not sure if I will definitely read this. It definitely caught my interest. But fantasy has been, I feel like I've been burned on some fantasy where I just don't feel like I liked it as much. And so I'm getting a little more cautious with what fantasy I'm choosing to read, because I don't want to start like hating and not wanting to pick it up at all. Which does bring me to April 7th, because again, I was on the fence of putting this on here, but I have a feeling we're going to end up doing this for our viral series, because we have a series of vlogs that we do that we read a viral book and talk about it and give our opinions in under 10 minutes. And this is the follow-up to Shield of Sparrows, which the next one I'm going to go over. It's called Rites of the Starling by Devney Perry. As I said, it's a sequel to Shield of Sparrows, and I wouldn't say I loved Shield of Sparrows. I don't know how much I really hated it. I think there was something with the ending that was a little exasperating, and it did have a cliffhanger. I know the main character, well, I shouldn't say, just in case someone wants to read Shield of Sparrows, I almost just said the whole ending. But I am interested to see what happens next and give it another try. I gave Shield of Sparrows 3 stars, so it wasn't like I hated it, but we'll see. Most likely we're going to do it for that series, like I said. And I always notice, I've been noticing more lately, how many people, on Goodreads, it'll say how many people mark something as want to read. And it caught my attention for this one because it said 105,000 people have marked this as want to read, which seemed like a lot. And to give you as a reference, because I did make a note of how much people are marking this as want to read, and This Kingdom Will Not Kill Me had 26,000. So 105,000 versus 26,000 seemed significant.
I want to talk about Rites of the Starling by Devney Perry. This is the sequel to Shield of Sparrows, which Jen and I both read. That book became super viral, and we read it for our viral book series that we do. And by the way, if there's a book going viral that you all think we need to read, then put it in the comments and we will consider it for our viral book series, because we love doing that series and we haven't really had one come up lately that we have wanted to do. So I'm open for suggestions on that. But anyways, we did read Shield of Sparrows for our viral book series. And although I don't think either of us loved the book, I know neither of us gave the book 5 stars, I do think the book picked up immensely towards the end, and I do think the book is going in a very promising direction. So I am very excited to jump into Rites of Starling, which is the second book, and I don't know what to expect necessarily. I haven't even read the description because I don't want to know too much. I want to go into this just open-minded and ready for anything, but I do love the world that Devony Perry created. I liked the kind of tree houses that they lived in. I liked the unique animals that they had to face, and that's what makes fantasy fun for me, is just the different setting, the magic, the weird animals or creatures, the different beings that you encounter, like the fae and the witches and the vampires even, and all of that stuff, like the different things that are similar enough to our world that we can understand it, but also add that layer of mystery and imagination to the stories. That's why I love fantasy, and I do feel like this book was picking up with all of those things and going in the right direction, so I am anxious to read this next book when it releases.
All right, also on April 7th is another psychological thriller. It's called The Girls' Trip by Ali Condie. Ali Condie had another book called The Unwedding, and I know I had wanted to read that. I think Amanda read it, and I want to say she didn't really like it, or she just thought it was okay. Because whatever she said about it, I ended up not wanting to read it. So hopefully this one is better. It's a novel about suspense and friendship. 3 friends who decide to disappear from their lives for a few days while on a trip to a national park, only to have one of them vanish. And what's interesting about this one is the 3 girls met via an online book club, and they've never met within 2 years of having this online book club. They've never met in person. So they go on this trip, have never met each other, and now for the first time meeting. And obviously I feel like one of them was plotting something and not saying who they were the whole time. But it says none of them have been true about telling who they really are to each other. So they probably all have secrets. That one sounded interesting, and hopefully it's good.
The Book Witch by Meg Schaefer. Oh my gosh, where to start? I loved The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. I think that was her first book. I think that was her debut book. And I just loved the characters. I loved the romantic couple together. I loved the setting and the whimsical style of her writing that matches the whimsical style of the setting of the story. And it just felt wholesome and cute. I absolutely loved The Wishing Game. And actually, Jen and I read that and did a vlog on it. So if that's something you're interested in, you can check it out on our channel. And The Lost Story, I liked. I think I just felt like my expectations were way up here with The Lost Story because I liked The Wishing Game so much, and I think it just fell a little short of my expectations, and I didn't like The Lost Story as much as The Wishing Game. The Book Witch, though, sounds really cool. It sounds like it's going to be a story that's right up my alley, and this is also a book that I know Jen is going to talk about, so I'm going to let her give you the description and everything, so we're not repeating ourselves, but I am anticipating this book, and it is on my list as well.
The next one's also on April 7th, and again, it's one of the authors that we really look forward to reading. I have read both her previous novels, The Wishing Game, which I absolutely love, The Lost Story, which I didn't love as much as The Wishing Game, but I still was really happy to have read it. And this one really has caught my interest. It's called The Book Witch. It's about a book witch, obviously, that can hop into any novel, and she just can't stay there. And it says, come along with the book witch in this magical and inspiring love letter to reading. And the inspiration for this book was Alice in Wonderland and Nancy Drew, which are 2 of my huge loves of reading when I was younger. So I definitely will be reading this. I think me and Amanda have talked about doing another ARC review, but I'm not sure. I really want to read this and do an ARC review. So you're either going to get it from me or from both of us. We'll see.
This next book has been blurbed as similar to Hunger Games, and to be honest with you, it reminds me of The Maze Runner. It's called The Verdant Cage by Jess Lowry, and it reminds me of The Maze Runner because Rose, who is your main character, lives in a valley that is surrounded by huge walls. And if you all read the Maze Runner books, or if you watch the movies, you know that these kids are trapped in, you know, an area with these huge walls and they try to escape. So Rose is an apothecary in this valley trapped within these walls, and her mother ends up murdered and her brother is blamed. And Rose just refuses to believe that her brother is responsible for this murder of her mother. So she starts digging and she starts finding out all these mysteries about the place that she's living and probably the people that are controlling the walls in the place that she's living in. And she starts to think that the walls aren't keeping things out, aren't protecting the people and keeping things out, but are trapping something within it. So this sounded like it could be potentially a really fun book. This is YA dystopian, and YA dystopian will always have a soft place in my heart. I feel like if it sounds good, I'm gonna try it, because a long time ago, y'all, I did read and loved The Hunger Games. I also read and liked Divergent, but I just feel like there's so much potential within that genre and the books could be so fun. So this one's on the list, and it's another YA. It's surprising me, like I said before, how many YA books that I do have on this list.
Another for April 7th. It's called Start at the End by Emma Gray. It's a sliding doors type novel. So sliding doors, I think it's a common term. I always think of the movie with Gwyneth Paltrow that I think came out in the 90s. Very good movie. I would highly recommend it. Loved it so much. But it's a sliding doors type novel about Audrey and Fraser, who start a love story for the ages, and it's an epic, unbreakable romance until one tragic moment changes everything and leaves them haunted by what ifs. And it leaves the questions, are we able to change fate? And is it ever too late to start again? And it just sounds like a typical fiction book that I love reading. And that's what drew me to it. So I'm looking forward to reading it.
And speaking of YA, I do have another YA book. It's categorized as YA dark fantasy. It's called Burn the Kingdom Down by Addie Thorley. And I'm just going to read you all the blurb because this is just what drew my attention. And after the blurb, to be honest with you, I stopped reading because I don't want to know more. But this is all I needed to hear. An action-packed enemies to lovers romantasy filled with a romance that will leave you breathless, betrayals that will rip your heart out, and a princess who will stop at nothing for revenge. And I love a good revenge arc, especially when it is a princess or a woman that is trying to exact her revenge. I find those characters to be very smart and cunning and ruthless, but of course it's enemies to lovers, so she's going to sort of fall for the enemy or have to work with the enemy in some capacity, and that softens her feelings towards them. So this just sounded really fun, and again, surprisingly, another YA that has made my list.
Another one that I almost didn't put on here also comes out April 7th, and it is called American Fantasy by Emma Straub. I have not read Emma Straub yet, and she does have several books out. She tends to do like a lighter fiction. Some call it like commercial fiction, and it's where it's almost romance, but it takes place on a 4-day cruise. And it says what happens when your teenage fantasy comes true when you're an adult. So on this 4-day cruise, there are 5 members of a famous 90s boy band, and Andy ends up befriending one of them. And I'm sure there's all kinds of drama that ends up happening on this cruise. It made me laugh because thinking of 90s boy bands like NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys, and just imagining going on a cruise where they're on there and you're trapped on this boat in the middle of the ocean and what craziness may ensue. So it sounded different than what I normally read and might be cute to read. And that one we'll see if I get to it on April 7th.
So now we're gonna switch gears and talk about a horror book called Blood Trails by Matt Query and Harrison Query. And I have no idea how these two authors are related. I did a very surface, a very light surface look. And by that, I mean, I just clicked on their names on Amazon to find out about the authors. And there's really nothing about either of them. So I have no idea. Are they brothers? Are they father, son? I have no idea. I don't know how they're related or if they're even related. It is possible for people to have the same last name and not be related. So I don't know. These authors are a mystery to me. But this book sounded very creepy and interesting. It was also labeled a supernatural thriller, so I'm not sure if it's going to be more horror or supernatural thriller, but you're following a man who used to be a poacher, and he has completely switched gears, and now he's turned into a warden that arrests poachers. So instead of being a poacher, he is targeting poachers, and that's made him very good at his job. Well, there is a cult that is inhabiting his area and causing trouble, and so he is trying to hunt them down and break them up and get this cult disbanded, arrested, whatever he needs to do. But as he's digging into this cult, he is finding much more mysterious things going on than he anticipated, and he's unraveling secrets of this area. It does take place in, it says, the West Rocky Mountains, I believe. And that just sounded very dark and fun for me. I do get in these moods sometimes where I just want something really dark and gritty. That's one reason why I'm such a fan of Joe Nesbo. His police thrillers are very dark and gritty. It just, you have a very dark setting. So I sometimes get in the moods for these kind of books, and this one's just caught my attention and sounded very interesting.
Another one on April 7th, and this one's called The Ending Writes Itself, and it's by Evelyn Clark, which is a combination of two authors, Kat Clark and V.E. Schwab. A famous best-selling novelist named Arthur Fletch passes away, and he did not finish his last novel. So 6 authors are called to this island, and it's almost like a reality show where they are tasked to, in this like challenge to write the ending. And it's on an island, I think, that the author had, it was like his private island or something. I'm not sure about that part. But whoever wins ends up not just being a ghostwriter for that book, but they're also getting promised from the publisher that their career will be helped, because it's 6 authors that are kind of down on their luck and, you know, not doing as well for their careers. So, and of course it says getting to the end could be murder. So I'm assuming a murder happens, or they're trying to kill each other to be the winner. I'm not sure, but this one is definitely something that I feel I would enjoy, so I added it to the mix. On April 7th is a debut fiction, and I love reading fiction, obviously. This one is called Yesteryear by Caro Claire Burke, and it sounded definitely different, kind of speculative fiction, and it's about a woman who's a social media influencer, and she is showing how she is the wife that does all kinds of things on the farm and raises chickens for eggs, and showing everything that she's doing is like almost like a traditional wife, but also I think it's like a pioneer theme. But she also isn't showing the camera the true story, that she's using a lot of things that aren't necessarily part of a pioneer wife. So I think she's trying to give this image, but she's not being truthful to her followers as to what's really going on behind the scenes. But the speculative part, she wakes up and she is in 1800s and she doesn't know what's happening. Like, why is she there? Is this some kind of time travel? Is she, you know, stuck in a coma and having some elaborate, vivid dream? And you don't know what happened. And she also thinks, is God testing her for what she had done with showing everyone kind of a false narrative for herself? So I really am curious as to how this novel is going to show what happened or what's happening. One of the theories that was listed also is that it's like an elaborate prank, or she's on a reality show And so I don't know. I feel like it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with this book.
All right, y'all, the final book for April 7th, and I know we've been on April 7th for what seems like forever, but I can't help it when good books all come out on the same day, okay? But the final book is Bloodsinger by Juliet Cross, and I actually have a physical copy of the arc right here. Look at my little dragon. Isn't it cute? I love it. And my awesome bookmark with a dragon. But anyways, Bloodsinger is right here by Juliet Cross. This is the sequel to Firebird, which I read and liked. I do want to read and do an arc review for this one if I can get it read before April 7th. That's a big if because I have a lot of books that are like on my immediate TBR. Some I'm doing for vlogs, some I just want to read, and some I want to read before release dates. Like I have arcs in my Kobo and like this one, and I am really itching to read a physical arc. I've mostly been reading on my Kobo, so I am really itching to read like a physical book, and I think this one might be one that I get to before release date. No promises, but if I can, then I will do an arc review because Firebird was pretty popular, and I am anticipating the follow-up. I remember this book, this woman on the cover, she is considered a witch in her society, and she falls in love and teams up with a dragon shifter. He is vicious, brutal, touch her and you die type, which you all know that I love, but he is a human, but he can shift into a dragon, and they can also do partial shifts, so they can half shift into dragons, and it just makes them very scary. And he is very protective of his witch, which they all don't like because of her magical powers and abilities. The end of Firebird did end on a bit of a cliffhanger, and the romance was really just picking up at the very end. There's always been a little attraction, a little connection between these two, but there really wasn't a lot of romance. It just felt like the story was just picking up at the end of Firebird. So I am really wanting to read this and get more into this book, into this world, and learn more about these characters and their relationship that has developed.
On April 14th is the physical arc Go Gentle by Maria Semple. She also wrote Where'd You Go, Bernadette, which I believe was a movie. I didn't see the movie and I didn't read the book. This one is, I think, more character driven than anything else, but it's basically about the main character's self-discovery. She lives in New York. She's trying to live a simple life and just enjoy her life and everything she has built, but a past comes back to haunt her, and she has to fight for what she wants to do with her life, basically. I'm making it very general because it is a very character-driven novel from what it seems like, but I haven't read her yet. I got the physical arc, so I definitely want to check her out because she has been praised for especially Where'd You Go, Bernadette, and it seems to be a lot of humor infused to her books as well. So I thought I would check her out and can't wait to try it.
This next book, Jen and I are gonna buddy read and vlog, and it's called Too Close to Home by Serafina Nova Glass. Jen has read a thriller by her. I think she read Vacancy in Room 10, I believe, and she did an arc review on it. I will throw a picture on the screen so y'all can see her arc review if you're interested. But we both were able to get electronic arcs of Too Close to Home and The Swamps, which is her new books coming out. So we want to buddy read them together and vlog it for you all. And of course, I think Jen's going to talk about this book in more detail, so I will let her talk about the book so it's not too repetitive, but I did want you all to know that it is on my most anticipated list.
April 14th brings another author that I have really loved to read, and it's Serafina Nova Glass is the author, and it's called Too Close to Home. I have read Quiet Street, The Vacancy in Room 10, Nothing Ever Happens Here. She also has one that came out end of January, I think it was, called The Swamps that I need to get to. I believe me and Amanda have said we were going to do a vlog on both of those, The Swamps and Too Close to Home. The Too Close to Home is a domestic thriller, and nothing is what it seems in this idyllic community of Clover Hill Lakes. Then Reagan Hoffman's car explodes at the Labor Day party. The wrong person is killed, but she is pretty convinced that it was supposed to be for her. And then she also sees her dead husband alive. So there's all kinds of weird secrets happening and coming out, and someone is trying to murder her. More secrets happen and get unveiled. And I love domestic thrillers. I think they're very interesting. And I also have very much enjoyed her novels, so I'm looking forward to it.
On April 14th, I have The Thorn Queen by Sasha Payton Smith. I have already read this book. I got an electronic ARC. I've already read it. I have filmed an ARC review. I am going to be posting it before the release date, so you all will be able to see my review of this book in full, all of my thoughts. We like to post our ARC reviews a little bit before the book comes out, just to let you all know, but not too far in advance, so this will be posted probably in the month of March. This is the sequel to The Thorn Queen, which was very popular, and I felt like this book was very creative, and I felt like it was a very good continuation of the story. It packs a big punch. There is a lot of emotions that get involved in these books, and I do recommend them. So keep your eyes open for my ARC review that is coming, and it will be out shortly.
Next is also on April 14th, and it's a horror book, and it's called These Familiar Walls by C.J. Dotson. Sounded very kind of crazy, not gonna lie. And there was a lot described in the synopsis. So I feel like it's almost giving away the whole book. I'm gonna try not to say as much as it says, because I don't like knowing that much going into a book. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Definitely put in the comments if you feel that way, or I'm sure there are people out there that don't care and they'll read everything about it in the synopsis, but I'm definitely one that likes to know minimally what the book is about, and then I like to go in, and sometimes I even go blind into a book depending on the author. What first caught my eyes, it said for fans of Catriona Ward, and it takes place first in 1998. A preteen Amber befriends a troubled new kid in the neighborhood, and then 20 years passes and something tragic happens that kid does, and then she ends up moving into the house that she basically grew up in, and a lot of horror type elements happen between haunting or things that, you know, she might feels like she's losing her mind. And it just sounded very compelling that it's one of the books that I really wanted to read as soon as I started reading what it was about. I thought, I need to read this now. So I definitely am going to check this out. If I read it before the date, obviously I will get you guys an ARC review. I do have an electronic ARC of this.
Okay, y'all, this book was iffy for me. It's called The Auction by Sadie Kincaid, and this author is very popular for her dark romance, mafia romance, and I think one of her most popular novels or series has a book in it called Dante, where obviously he is a mafia man and it's a dark romance. That's really all I know. I've never read this author before. Like spicy dark mafia romance, sometimes I want to read books about that, but it hasn't been a genre that I really read a lot of. This one caught my attention because she is a popular author on TikTok, and if you all know me, I'm very curious, so I am curious to see what this author can offer. And this book's about a woman who, as a child, her parents were murdered, and her grandfather saves her life by promising the mafia that he will turn her over to them on her 21st birthday. So she isn't murdered when her parents are. She's saved, and she grows up knowing that when she turns 21 as an adult, she's going to be handed over to the mafia. And the mafia decides to have an auction, and she is purchased by a very scary billionaire of this mafia clan. And I'm assuming that the story goes from there. Of course, there's going to be a lot of fighting there because she's not going to want to be in this situation. I always find these stories to be kind of interesting. It reminded me of Rose in Chains, which I read by Julie Soto, and actually Jen and I did a viral book video on that story. But the person that is purchasing her, I'm guessing, is maybe not as mean to her as he is to other people. He shows her his softer side, or there is a very good reason he purchased her, and it's not necessarily to own her but to protect her in some way. That kind of tends to be how these plots play out. But like like I said, I'm very curious about this author. This is the first book of a brand new series that she's come out with, and it caught my attention because of her popularity. So I am wanting to give this one a try.
Moving on to April 21st, I have one of my favorite authors, Sally Hepworth, Mad Mabel. I've had this for a little while and I've been wanting to read it. I've been putting it off a little bit because I got it a few months ago and it seems so far away. But here we are, creeping up on the time it's going to come out, and I really do intend on getting an ARC review out for this one. It's about Mabel, who she is, I think, 81 or 91 when you first start the novel, but I do think you end up doing like a flashback to when she's younger. There are two kinds of people that you don't suspect with a murder, and that's a young girl and an old woman. And I think it very much intimates that she may have murdered someone either when she was young or maybe when she's old. And I think when I originally had read the description for this, I could have swore it said like a young girl moves in next door to her and starts to kind of not investigate her, because I think the girl's kind of young, but starts having questions about this neighbor who's, you know, older, and what is she up to, and things seem strange. So I don't know, it sounds very different. I really enjoy Sally Hepworth's books and I can't wait to read this one. So keep an eye out for an ARC review for this.
This next book Jen brought my attention to because it is an author she has read and loved in the past. It's called The Caretaker by Marcus Kluwer. He also wrote the book We Used to Live Here, which I believe they turned into a movie. I have not read the book or seen the movie, but Jen keeps talking about how good the book was, and I want to read his new book coming out because she's got me excited for it. And I'm gonna let her talk about it because I know she's gonna have this on her most anticipated as well, and she probably knows a little bit more about the author and can say more things about what's coming because she's more familiar with his work.
April 21st is the day that Caretaker by Marcus Kluwer comes out, and I just recently read this. It's part of a We Hart Arcs vlog that we're going to be putting out sometime soon. So definitely check out that video, and I show as I read it. I was lucky enough to get an electronic ARC, and I loved this book. I originally read his first book, We Used to Live Here, and I really enjoyed that one. This one, I loved even more. It was a 5-star book for me. I absolutely loved it. It's about a woman who reads a Craigslist ad, and it asks for a caretaker for an elderly man. And she goes to this house to interview for this job, and a lot of things end up happening from there. And it's a very strange horror book that, if you like those type of books, and I would say it was in the realm of Catriona Ward, and Stephen King even, it's just such a great book. I loved it. I devoured it. It's unique. I have to check it out. April 21st is when it comes out, so definitely put it on your TBR.
Final day, April 28th, final day in this most anticipated. And I have actually 4 books for April 28th, and the first 2 are going to be ARCs that I've already read. The first one's called Molka by Monica Kim. This is the author of The Eyes Are the Best Part. I'm doing an ARC review. It's already filmed. I need to post it, so I will be posting an ARC review. It's probably in late March or early April for you all to get a full review and my full thoughts and feelings on that, so stay tuned for that. But it is a horror book, and it is about hidden cameras, so it was very fun to read. And the next book that I want to talk about is Bloodbound by Ellis Hunter. I read this as part of a vlog we did about reading ARCs, and y'all can go watch that vlog if you're interested. But I found this book to be very fun. It sucked me in. I wanted to read it. I couldn't stop reading it. And the ending, although I think the ending was slightly predictable, what I did not predict was the found friendship and family and sisterhood that was in the end of this book. And I just really liked that little twist. It is a romance. There is a romance in the book, but there's also a very strong sisterly bond that forms a sort of found family, which y'all know that I love. So I really enjoyed this book. I do think that it is a good read. You are torn. Like, I remember reading this book, in the back it says choose a side, and I was just like, oh my God, I don't know what side I want. I could not pick. And I was just like, you know, how is this gonna wrap up at the end? So, although I was at first a little disappointed, I was also very excited to see further. Like, I kept reading and I was excited to see why things were resolved. And you just need to read it. If you want a good, emotional, fun book to read, then you need to read this.
We are on the final two, and it's both April 28th. The first one is Dark is When the Devil Comes by Daisy Pierce. And I originally wanted to read another book by Daisy Pierce. I didn't have a chance to read the other one. This one also sounded really interesting, and I was drawn to it. It says, unrelentingly scary and thrilling. A woman is coming home to her parents' home after a divorce, and she wants to spend time with her sister, but she doesn't show up. And things don't add up for her sister and why she isn't coming back when she had said she was going to come back. And the only other tagline is, if you go looking for trouble, you just might find it. I definitely want to read it, even though it seems like a typical trope of someone going back home, disappearances or potential murder and what's really going on. But I'm sure something maybe from her past around there is going to come up. But it still really drew my interest, so I am definitely going to be reading that one.
The next book is called Bulletproof by K.M. Moranova, and this author wrote a book that I had to DNF because I was so emotionally invested in the characters, and I'm talking about The Fabrics of Our Soul. If you all have read this book, then you probably know what I'm talking about. But I just loved that book. I was eating it up. I'm like, this is going to be a 5-star read. But I started kind of seeing the direction that book was going, and I could not read any further. I read like 80% of that book and then had to DNF it because I just was like, oh my God, I cannot take the ending. I know what's going to happen and I can't take it anymore. So I did have to DNF it 80% of the way in, but not because it was bad. It was because it was so good and I did not want to read what was going to happen next to these characters. So I stopped. But she has come out with a dark romance book called Bulletproof. I think she also wrote My Heart, what was it? Hold on. Let me look it up and just see, okay? It's called Your Knife, My Heart, and then the second book is called My Blade, Your Back. And I have seen those books become popular. I've seen people talking about them. This is a new book that she's coming out with, and I do have an ARC, so I would like to read it and review it for y'all in an ARC review if I get a chance. And I feel like I just loved The Fabric of Our Souls. The writing was so good that I want to try to read maybe a dark romance. Maybe it won't be as emotional and as sad as The Fabric of Our Souls. So I don't know. I like the author and she's coming out with a new book. So I'm anticipating it and I got an ARC. So I'm hopefully will be able to read it soon. My final book is called Good for Her by Tyler Page. This book, when I read it, it's described as a horror romance, and my mind instantly went to Mayfly by C.J. Lead, which I read and just loved, thought was so fun. It is a little odd, like it is a strange book. I think it was described as steampunk or something like that, which is something that's not necessarily I'm drawn towards, but I did have a lot of fun reading Mayfly, and even though it was really weird, I enjoyed it. So this book, instantly I thought of Mayfly when I read the first blurb, so I am wanting to put it on the list. It is very unique style of book, and it's kind of like it reminds me of like a Quentin Tarantino film. When I was reading Mayfly, I thought like, wow, seems like a movie that Quentin Tarantino would produce. So let me just read you the first little blurb. That's what drew me in. Falling in love with her first love wasn't part of her plan. Helping her kill the Hollywood elite wasn't part of his. So this feels like a romance where the two are crazy killers and they're killing Hollywood elites off for some reason or another. I did not go forward and read the full description. I kind of don't want to know. I feel like this might be a book that I want to be surprised in and just be along for the ride. So I highly anticipating this book. I feel like once the mood hits me, I am definitely going to be wanting to read this book because I have never read a book like Mayfly, and I am kind of hoping that this one is similar vibes and can be sort of give me that same entertainment value as Mayfly did.
And we're ending on a physical arc. So this one is called The Radiant Dark. Alexandra Oliva. I don't know if that's how you say her name, so I apologize if that's not the correct pronunciation. And it's very reflective, so it's catching all the light. But this one, and I really like how, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it because of the light, but how it, from the O in the novel, there's a light coming out. I really like the cover for this. This one is fiction, and it takes place, it's like a family saga over the course of like 80 years. It's a typical fiction book that I feel like I get drawn to, and I just have a love for these type of stories. Very character driven, but you also see everything that happens throughout this family's life. Very much looking forward to this, also on April 28th, in case I didn't say that, and can't wait to try this one. Thanks so much, guys, for watching. I have a handful plus some electronic arcs. There's so much I want to get to in these months, and I can't wait. What are some of the books you guys are looking forward to? Any of these catch your interest? Let us know in the comments. Always love to hear from anyone and anything that you have in terms of thoughts on these books or what you want to read. Was there something you're surprised we didn't talk about? And let us know. Thank you for watching, and until next time.